How to estimate time for a project. In this video, I am going to show you how to estimate time for a project, but I want to show you how builders do it, visualizing it, so I'm going to use the flip chart behind me. Do you want to know what sketching has to do with this and what key things you can't forget if you want to do it right? If that's the case, then stay with us. You're going to love this content. So I'm going to take you through my process for estimating time for a project. I will tell you, one time I had a project executive sit me down when I was younger in my career and said, "Hey Jason, this is how you do it. You take your milestone and then you basically just draw a line, and if that's your mobilizations, you estimate that. Let's say that takes 3 weeks. Then here's your basement over here. That's probably going to take about 6 weeks." And he just kept drawing this throughout, like an executive summary on a schedule, and said this is how we target the end date on the project. Now I did like it because he was sketching and he was thinking about it, and I knew it was early on and we didn't have time to do detailed planning. But I will tell you that this type of estimating that is used in pre-construction by estimators or project executives or business owners or project managers has a tendency to undercut the duration. There's a much better way to sketch this so that we don't get ourselves into trouble, which I'm going to show you right now. But I will give kudos to the homies that trained me. Sketching it out is a very, very good idea. So number one, when you're about to estimate the duration for a project, I highly recommend that you first and foremost, you go into the drawing. So I will grab the drawing set, and I'll literally, and this is my really cool version of a stick figure. No, we're not going to charge you for that. That's really good sketching, by the way. But I'll literally just start flipping page after page after page. And what I'll do is I'll sketch or circle or take pictures of different key components on the plans that I know that I need to loop into the schedule. And I'll get an overview, a 3D overview in my mind of how the building is going to come together. The second thing that I'm going to do with that is to sketch the phases. Now this is really an art form, and when you get good at tact planning and tact steering and control, then you'll be able to do this after like the first one or two that you do. But just believe me, this is a key skill. If you want to know more about how to create a macro level tact plan early on in pre-construction or when you're estimating the time duration for a project, please reference that book, or you can use the comments below and reach out and we'll help you. And also you might be in a situation where we can do a little bit of help and work on a one-on-one engagement and really get you what you need. But let me go ahead and explain this right now. The review of the drawings is done and I'm going into sketching mode. Typically what I'll do is I'll obviously identify a start date. If you have an end date or a stipulated deadline or substantial completion deadline, you'll write that here as well. But what I like to do is break up my building by phase. So let me just give you an example here. Let's say that I have a building here, and this is, I'm just going to draw the elevation of it, right? I'm going to have my foundations, I'm going to have my superstructure, okay? I'm going to have my interiors, I'm going to have my exterior, and I'm going to have my roof, and I'm obviously going to have my site. These are the different phases that I'll have for this building. So when I'm going to go ahead and sketch this out, what I'll say is, all right, here on the left, I'll have my site, my foundations, my superstructure, my exterior, depending on where you live in the United States or throughout the world, you might flip these, my interiors, my roof, you might even have some others, but I'm just going to start with this. And what I typically like to do is say, okay, my site work, I'm just going to have a nice little bar here, okay? My foundations, I think I have about 3 zones, so that's going to look like this, okay? My superstructure, I think that's going to have about 12 zones to it, and I think it's going to be about this long, okay? My exterior is going to be the same thing. It's going to look something like that. My interior is probably going to match similarly in that direction, okay? And then my roof is probably going to be similar in that direction as well, and then any closeout items. So I think it's going to go from my site to my foundations to my superstructure. There's a certain point 5 floors up where that's going to enable the exterior and the interiors. That is going to enable my completions, and that's going to be my end day. So these are my different phases. So what I'm doing here that's different, you'll remember that that original project executive told me to just do a line, but a phase is never just a line. It's always going to be like, if you have 3 zones, it's going to have another dimension to it. So that's why I draw these shapes. These phases will always look like that. Now the reason that based on the phases I want to sketch it out is because now I know how things tie together, right? The exterior is going to tie to, or my superstructure is going to tie to my exterior. My superstructure is going to enable the interior of the building once the resource come down. How are these things tied together? What are the interdependencies here, right? And if, let's say I had a different phase altogether, I can network that and see how that ties together as well throughout the schedule. So this sketch is absolutely huge. And typically what we do at LeanTact and at Elevate is we'll just go ahead and plug in these different lines inside Excel, and we'll start looking at sequences for each of these phases, and we'll start to build the backbone of our macro level TAC plan. So here's what people typically forget. They don't break it out in a location-based work breakdown structure by phase, and they don't sketch it out to get a high-level image of how the phases are going to interact with each other. Once you do this 2 or 3 times, you'll get really good at it. Once you have the actual shapes in your sketch, and like I said, you can then, like we do, plug this into Excel. Just as I usually just put yellow highlights in there. You can start calling trades early on and say, okay, hey, generally, what is this going to take? And you'll start to create a sequence inside here that you know is going to replicate throughout your different zones. And so you might need to shorten or extend this, shorten or extend this. The other day, an exterior trade said, hey, this is what it's going to be on the east, the south, the west, and the north. And then this kicks off different phases for my interiors. So I was actually able to sketch out the interiors with it and really tie these together for different portions of the interiors. So you're really starting to validate these sequences with your trades after you do the initial sketching. Once you have the overall structure and you know, hey, these are the phases, and this is how they're going to tie together. And I generally think that this is how the interdependence works between the phases. You can sketch this out. Like I said, you can have this in Intact or you can have this in Excel. And what you'll end up doing is being able to see, hey, between my start date and my finish date, I think I have a pretty good structure and I have a plan to finish. Now that's key, because if you had an overrun, like let's say one of these phases went past, or you had any other problem where like the sequencing wouldn't work, or let's say you had winter weather days here, right? And these phases wouldn't fit and there's a risk for it to push out. Whatever you're dealing with, you'll want to review this as an internal team and see if you have the right structure and the right backbone. Once you have reviewed it with the overall team, you'll want to take the builders, and if you're a consultant, you'll do it with the super and the PM. If you are the builder and you're the super, you'll want to loop in the PM, the project executive, any foreman that you possibly can, and start to go through it and tear it apart. Okay, do we have a plan for this sequence to properly finish on time? Is this the correct tie from structure to the other phase? Can we get foundations to release the superstructure on time? Is there any way to optimize that? When can we start the exterior and the interior based on how the building are going up, right? So you should see marks all over this thing, right? You know, basically red line and tear it apart, and let the builders like find out what could possibly be wrong with the structure, right? And if you see anything like these overruns, or maybe you don't have enough buffers here, you'll want to solve those problems with the actual builders on site and with the project team. Once you have it, as Weston Woolsey used to say at Oakland, pulled inside the box, a really wise man, you'll want to make sure that you're reviewing whether or not you have any buffers at the end and that you feel like you can actually make this deadline. There's one key that I want to remind you of. If you don't feel like you have enough buffers or you have a problem, you might want to look at different zoning strategies. You will need to reach out in the comment section below if you want to learn more about this. But let's say in this phase you have 5 zones. That's going to give you a certain speed here. If you said, hey, I'm going to go from 5 zones to 9, then the shape of that phase will incline without hurting trade partners, and you will finish sooner simply by having more zones. So if you do have a problem here or with the buffers, you might have to look at your zoning strategies for these different phases to pull that overall structure back in. And then we'll just want to make sure that any sequences that you've coordinated with the trade partners, that zoning strategy actually works. At the end of this, once you feel like you have your structure, you have your end date, you know exactly how much time this is going to take, you're going to do 2 things. You're going to see, hey, what are the risks generally, not too detailed, but what are the risks with this overall macro level attack plan? As you find those risks, you might mark them here and see, hey, how does that affect my end date or my time estimation for the duration? The other thing you're going to want to pull in are your anchors. So you have likely done this kind of project before, and you either know how long that other project took, you know on a square foot basis how much time it takes in any unit of measure, or you know how far over you went on that last project as an anchor. And so let's say on the last project you went over by 3 months, and you now have created a reasonable structure, and you now know that your last project went over by 3 months. Okay, well, why did it happen? Do you need to add 3 months to the overall duration of the project and the target, or do you feel like these risk mitigation strategies have taken out that variability, right? That risk. So when you're done and you have your structure, you've analyzed your zoning, you know you have enough buffers, you know you don't have overruns, look at your risks, look at your anchors, and make sure you're happy with this end date. Once you are, this is where the magic comes in. You know that you can promise this substantial completion target and that you have the correct overall duration that will not rush and push the team, and you can estimate your general conditions and your general requirements, which means that you'll have the right budget and you will have estimated the time for a project in a way that will set up your team successfully and it won't hurt you or your trade partners. And so in the description below, I am going to give you an outline for this in Canva and link you to our book about tack planning, which is fantastic. The bottom line is we have to estimate the duration for projects all the time, and we don't belong, like I said, just coming over here and drawing simple lines. We're going to hurt our team that way. Follow the process, get your start date, map out your phases, map out your interdependence ties, get it reviewed, look at your zoning strategy, your buffers, your risks, and your anchors. And I promise you, you'll set yourself up with a really nice project because you'll have the money and the time to do it right the first time. On we go.